All right, I hope everyone is having a good morning. My name is Meg or Megasett. I am joined with Ellesmere and with Jdotb and Noah Smith and Dylan Barker. If you guys wouldn't mind introducing yourselves and letting everyone know who you are and what you do.
Sure, yeah. I'm Dylan Barker. I'm one of the lead encounter designers on mainline WoW. I've been with the company about 11 years, making dungeons, raids, and some outdoor zones.
My name's Noah Smith. I'm a quest designer on mainline WoW. A lot of quest design and a lot of feature work, and I'm currently feature owner for the Prey system in Midnight.
Cool.
Right. So we have a collection of questions today regarding, I think, mostly PvE, and given our experience, it is mostly coming from a healer perspective as well. If JB or Ellesmere, if you guys have any specific questions that you want to ask from what we have, feel free. Otherwise, I was just going to kind of go down the list.
Oh, that makes sense to me.
Sounds good.
I think that works, yeah.
So yesterday, with the Midnight Alpha starting, we got a sneak peek into the Season 1 dungeon pool for Midnight. Some of these dungeons are returning from much earlier in the game's history. So outside of the community voting, how do you decide which dungeons to bring back? Is it mostly story-based or is it something else?
There's a whole bunch of factors that go into that, and it's kind of a fun process because we start thinking, what a player's not seen for a while? What are things that we've done in recent expansions where it's like, oh, we had a dungeon kind of like that many years ago? It's sometimes texture for the way that you route through the space. We want to have something that's not linear, and a bunch of things we made recently are linear, so we want to go back and do something a little bit crazier. But then sometimes it's just theme, and you can see like, oh, this is a patch that features a lot of mechanical units and sort of those sorts of monsters and themes. Oh yeah, we have something that kind of fits nicely. So there's a big mix of considerations.
All right. And then kind of following up with that, we have seen, like I'd mentioned, dungeons that are pretty old compared to more modern design. How do you decide which parts of dungeons or returning dungeons get updated to better fit the modern dungeon design?
The cool thing is that the folks really doing most of that work play Mythic Plus obsessively. So a good part of it is just tasting the soup and being like, nah, that tastes old. I don't like it. And that's not to say that it didn't hold up for its time and place, but WoW has done well over the years by evolving and by developing to the tastes of the players that it continues to bring in and keep. So when we look at an old fight, if it's just not engaging by modern standards, if it isn't visually descriptive or spectacular enough by modern standards, we do feel pretty free to go in there and edit, and we try to keep the soul of the thing intact as often as possible, and sometimes to just reinterpret it. So you get that sort of spectrum from something that feels like a light touch that just keeps the thing intact, all the way to we're going to fully re-envision this, but the same creature is going to persist.
I like that. Thank you. Tasting the soup is good.
Yeah. And I think that dovetails nicely into the next question that we had, which was that when you're reworking those dungeons, how much has dungeon design like changed over time? Obviously we've got Mythic Plus now, when a lot of these returning dungeons were originally made, that was not a consideration. Has there been a lot of updates in the way that the team approaches dungeon design, or is it just kind of been iterative from that point?
I think if you look at it over a long history, we've been moving in a direction. I think expansion over expansion, I think iterative is a good way to think of it. I personally made my first dungeon in BFA. So I think about how we did things then versus how we do things now. It was a little bit more Wild West. I think we had a little bit less of a well-rounded understanding of like what Mythic Plus trash meta really should feel like. And we've kind of grown into that as we grow into it as players, as the community starts to tell us what they do and don't like. So it's in the short term, again, iterative, and over the long haul, I think we've been sort of moving in a direction of sort of making things more readable, more understandable, and sort of tailoring to what specs and players are demonstrating they're capable of.
Yep. Well, I think you guys have done a good job on that in that respect. Definitely some of the mechanics do feel much better telegraphed these days, I think.
Yeah, to pick up on that, like that's I think a big part with obviously add-on disarmament being something Ian's been talking about. I think it puts the burden on us as encounter designers to tell more of the story and the mechanic in the game world to make it more clear, like what's going to happen. Are you reacting appropriately to this thing? If it kills you, why did it kill you? And we are usually pretty good at that. It's just in a world where you also have, let's say, cybernetic enhancements helping you, it sort of gets lost in the sauce as a mutual dance between us and like add-on makers. So it's going to be cool to have us like put more focus on having the thing play out in the world, having players read game state based on what they're seeing in the world with their allies, and sort of make decisions from there.
Yeah, I appreciate that a lot. You had
Yeah.
mentioned kind of dungeon design changing based on how players have improved over time. Something that has come up a lot recently, and that I think maybe more as a modern player, is the difference or the impact of healer DPS and whether or not it is important or impactful. People that maybe grew up playing a different version of the game don't want a DPS if they're a healer because they want to heal. So is healer damage something that you would tune around or design around, and is it something you want to consider for success, or are you happy with the current level of impact that we provide?
I think broadly not, and I can't speak for necessarily class team intent, but when I'm balancing an encounter, we're not treating healer DPS as the make or break for dungeons or for raids. It's something that players are going to do to optimize. It's cool that they get to do that, and the exact ratio that players do that at is not something that we're necessarily tuning around.
Okay.
Is it a thing? Can you speak at all to whether there is an attempt to balance healer damage, or is that a thing that's largely kind of derivative of the rest of the class, that wherever it ends up is where it ends up, or is there an attempt to get them all to the same place?
I can't speak eloquently to that.
Yeah.
I wish I could.
Okay.
I think one one question I had, especially as an HPAL, and I know Meg was curious about it as well as a Mistweaver, is about being a melee healer. So there's been a lot of instances and like fights where melee healers have been disproportionately negatively affected by being considered melee while also being a healer. And also vice versa. There are some fights where like we're considered ranged or we're considered healers even though we're melee, and then some mechanics are not necessarily intuitive because of that. Our healing being reliant on melee uptime can cause like significantly harder encounters based on design due to that. And I'm just wondering if there's a chance we could see more healers excluded from mechanics, specifically melee healers, or is that just kind of how the nature of the beast?
So there's two parts here. The first part about like excluding from targeting is something that I don't want to get into as like we're definitely going to do or not do something like that. It's definitely an interesting consideration, and it's something that we'd have to work with the class team on, because to some extent the amount of engagement that the class is providing might be based in part by the expectation that they have this much to worry about as a class and this much to worry about as an encounter. So putting that aside, I think one thing that's definitely going to help for players just looking at how encounters are built, things that do frontals are going to be more deliberate, and we're going to move mostly to a world where creatures that do cones and that sort of thing should have, as we would use the design term, more affordance. That is a thing they can do. And as like a test for the word affordance, we'll say something like, if I show you a dragon as a WoW player, everybody expects it to breathe. Maybe those who've been playing a lot longer expect it to tail swipe at the other end. These are things that are just sort of presumed to be something that this creature could reasonably do. And some of that's contributed to just by it being a dragon. But then there are other things where it's like, well, I kind of get it if a basilisk does a cone. What visual properties of a basilisk make sense for it to do it? Well, it's large, it's kind of wide, it takes up the kind of space that it feels right. It's something we'd spawn fewer of. And we'd make things a little bit more clear that this is the one that does the frontal in the pack, as opposed to having a couple of different mobs doing it and it just kind of becomes chaos. Fewer, more intentional frontals, I think, is going to make that overall easier for folks who are in melee and maybe have other responsibilities.
Cool. I love that. And
Yeah,
I guess
that's great.
to tie into that with in terms of like the visual clarity, we've had a lot of major system changes to M+ in the past expansion, including obviously the big visual graphic overhaul where things became much easier to see. We also had, resilient keys. We had the affix overhaul. Are there any new major M+ changes or systems like that we can look forward to coming in Midnight?
So nothing huge on that sort of systemic level. And my background is predominantly in the crafting of the content itself. So on that front, I think one thing I'm most excited about is just changing our trash philosophy to make things more apparent. There's a couple of sort of subtle techniques that we're doing there. Some of it is not necessarily doing less overall throughout trash, but concentrating the more complicated, robust, and dangerous creatures into fewer but like more strategically placed spawns. Also, just making sure that some things which don't need to be a cast bar are not a cast bar, so that the things that are a cast bar become very clear. These are the things that you probably need to have some communication about how to kick, especially understanding that to some extent with add-ons being reduced, we may be looking at players needing to verbally communicate this or communicate via macro for the first time in a long time. We want that to be something that's a little bit more manageable than maybe it would feel right now, where there are more bars and you're sort of sifting through, how do I manage this lot? So
I guess then, would you say if there was a major change that you're trying to make to Mythic Plus in this expansion, would it be with the expectation that add-ons are taking a step back and that we're trying to get dungeons to a more approachable place in a an add-on list or add-on light world?
I think that's right. I've sort of jokingly described it as we're just taking away cybernetic enhancements. Players are still really, really good at the game, and they're going to learn things very quickly, and they're going to develop a culture around how certain things get defeated. And I think leaving some space in Midnight for the community to sort of figure that out, as opposed to trying to like do a major systemic change that we're definitely announcing right now, which we're not, helps us to provide that space, because we're taking a big swing here as far as how the game is going to feel without a Weakora barking at you in a particular way. And then, of course, if folks who are more in-depth day-to-day with the actual inner workings of the Mythic Plus system are looking between now and launch and want to make a change, I'm sure at that point we'll communicate.
Kind of along the same lines there, where you were talking about reducing the volume of casts and just kind of complexity of trash packs. One of the most common issues with Mythic Plus that we hear from people is the pugging environment and being able to coordinate within those really complicated pulls. So it sounds like that is being addressed through just reducing that clutter. Is there any other improvements on that front in Midnight, like for active tools in the dungeon, for handling kicks, or for social aspects like LFG updates that we could expect to see?
I know of some that are in the works. I'm not sure to what degree they've been discussed. I think it is a constant need for us to make it easier and better to get a group. And I think we're constantly looking at tools we can give to players in the wake of add-on disarmament that might help better communicate game state. A lot of that, as an encounter designer, is pretty straightforwardly, I make the monster show you what it's intending to do and tell you whether it's working or not when you're trying to counter it. As far as broader gameplay, like showing cooldown state and all that, like that's something I can't elegantly speak to, but I can definitely say, like, we are going to be playing a ton of it internally. We do a lot of playtesting, and as we start to feel the lack of a thing, I'm sure we'll start putting on the schedule ways to address it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then I'd also like to ask, and this could actually play into the praise system as well. I'm not super familiar with the praise system, but I am interested in it. So I am curious with rewards for PvE as a whole, how intentional is the incentivization to do both keys and raid to get your best in slot?
So I'm not a rewards designer, so I hate to be boring and say like I can't speak entirely to their intent. I can say like in general, I think people on the team want you to try everybody's stuff. Everybody makes really fun stuff. It'll segue nicely into Prey. I can set Noah up by saying like I want there to be an excuse for players who play high-end gameplay to, while they're waiting for a group to come on, go in and do some stuff in the outdoor world that maybe wasn't appealing to them, which maybe is, even if not because it's mega rewarding, but just because it's like a fun excuse to get out and explore. So yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can definitely follow up on that and say the impetus behind the Prey system as an opt-in kind of overlay outdoor world system is we're kind of not pushing it on anyone. If you just want to stick in Mythic Plus or stick in rating, or just if you love delves, we're really intentful to offer kind of an alternative path via Prey, a complementary path to say the delve loop. But we're definitely not associating player power with it. And you know, if all you want to do is be really good at Mythic Plus, and like Dylan was saying, you know, you have downtime, you want to do world quests for stuff anyway, jump into a Prey mode. You know, it'll make you kind of, you know, pay a little bit more attention than you otherwise might in the outdoor world, especially if you're a certain kind of player at a certain kind of skill level. But you know, I think right now we are actively thinking as a team about, you know, an ecosystem of multiple different things the player could be doing rather than a specific optimized path to any specific rewards vector, as someone who's not a rewards designer.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything about the praise system that you are particularly excited for players to get into or kind of see how things develop further?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I think as more info comes out about the system, and I'm the entire Prey team is just so excited to see kind of how different kinds of players react to it when we do drop it in alpha. It really is a recontextualization of the outdoor world. You know, we talk about, you know, the world being a big part of World of Warcraft. But we have so much of our end game loop is instanced, you know, whether it's delves or whether it's dungeons or raids. This is Prey is really, you know, we're trying to accomplish several things. One of the biggest things is to just say to any kind of player, like, hey, there's stuff worth doing in the outdoor world, and we can offer you new and immersive challenge while you're doing it. Yeah, so very excited for that, to throw that in front of all kinds of players.
That's awesome.
I'm
Yeah.
curious, you know, we had the in this patch, we had the Kaiveza encounter. And I'm curious how much that seemed to be very well received by the community. I think everybody was doing that. This the first week of this patch. Is the Prey system going to be? Does that feel like a spiritual sort of successor to that kind of encounter?
I can let Dylan speak to the encounter design specifically. I will say for the Prey system, we are trying to incorporate a lot more kind of outdoor mechanics in the similar vein, and this is where kind of I'll lean on Dylan's expertise, where we're leveraging in terms of balance a lot more on kind of player knowledge and reaction and prioritization, as opposed to just flat damage checks. Both in the outdoor gameplay, we're designing on the quest side, but I'll let Dylan speak more to the encounter design at higher Prey difficulties.
Yeah, I would say nothing is going to come to that level where Kaiveza was for Prey. We'll definitely continue to do the sort of seasonal Delves boss because they're super fun. It was actually really cool to see this first week where all the hardcore players were like, this is the thing to do. And like some of the joking about doing that first was really fun. So
I guess one follow-up on the Prey question is, will the Prey system get out-geared? Like as we get like really strong gear towards like, you know, mythic raiders who end up full best in slot, like is it just going to be trivialized, or is the scaling, does it scale really high?
So as the system kind of, you know, takes its final shape and we're putting it in front of players, we're getting a ton of kind of later stage feedback, and all of our tuning considerations kind of fall under that bucket. We don't want to write any specific checks right now. However, I will say that there is a sense of we have, Prey is pivotably built around kind of skill expression, and there is an extent to which a core part of skill expression is being able to take your competency to other parts of the game. If you're a very good raider, if you're pushing high keys and you have awesome gear and you know your class, it should feel great when you step into a nightmare prey and you're just like, I got this on lockdown. You're not going to feel that that quickly in the expansion. I can almost guarantee that. But there is an understanding here where, because we want to maintain and kind of boost up the fidelity of the outdoor world and that multiplayer experience, a huge part of that is being able to go to your friend circle or your guildies or whoever you're with and be like, yeah, look at me, I'm geared out, I know what's up, I can carry you through that nightmare prey hunt, no problem.
Cool.
That's exciting.
All right. Well, I think that got us through our list of questions. I think we got about 5 minutes left. I guess we'll do the thing. Was there anything you wanted us to ask you that we didn't ask that you wanted to talk about?
Dylan, do you want to take that first?
Oh man, I think I'm probably just excited for individual dungeons that I've gotten to play a small part in as folks were sort of coming in and taking them over and making them real. This is just from the background of just like somebody who likes making combat spaces that feel alive, and also the creatures are really rooted in the fantasy of the place that they're in. So I've called this out in another interview, but like having a dungeon in Murder Row where that is a place where players have like really keen expectations about like the kind of place it ought to have been, but also like it's not a place that had a lot of like robust like energy and such put into it in the game, aside from just sort of NPC spawning. So getting a story and a vibe of this is this place, a snapshot in time from all of the danger of midnight. What's it like to be in the seedy underbelly of this city while that's going on? I think it's just a really fun proposition. Also have done some pretty cool stuff mechanically in there that I think players are going to find at least charming and hopefully really cool. So
yeah, I think for Prey, as more information comes out, and once again, we're so excited to kind of see players hit it as it is unlocked later in the alpha. It is kind of contrary to previous expansions. It is not a new thing to do. It is a new way to experience the outdoor world, full stop. Like, it is a transformative overlay system that really changes how you interact with the world. And we are just so excited to see kind of what that looks like when it hits players' hands. Like the kind of emergent gameplay opportunities, the war mode implications, the final tuning between hard mode and nightmare mode. This really has been kind of a labor of love on all of our on all of everyone involved in the Prey team. We are so passionate about putting character and intentionality. In the past, if you're a pretty good player, the outdoor world can feel like a little bit of a second screen kind of activity while you have like YouTube up and you're just doing your role quests. So we're just going to be like, nope, pay attention, sit up straight in your chair and lock in. That's kind of what I'm really, really looking forward to with the Prey system.
That's really cool. I did I did have a few short follow-up questions about add-ons and weak auras and stuff specifically for Dylan. Just to kind of, from a healer perspective, one of the things that add-ons and weak auras did that was really important for us in Mythic Plus and has been really important for us for a long time is targeted spells. Basically, targeted spells is like when we see on our party frames that, a player is being targeted by a spell, we are able to preemptively, either prep our hots on that player or give them a shield or whatever it might be before they get hit by this big damage event. And I'm just wondering, is there plans for the UI, for the base UI, to incorporate some type of targeted spell on party frame system for healers?
Yeah, I think the biggest chunk of effective change that's going to hit that is, like I was saying before, the shift to a more intentional set of cast bars and to having some things sort of clearing themselves out of the idea of being a cast bar and just having them function more directly. I think a lot of what you're describing there is this thing, which is not dangerous on a 4 or a 6, becomes instantly lethal should it resolve on a 14 or a 16 or higher. In those cases, I think just allowing those more cognitive space along with like changes from the class team, making classes a little bit more readable and playable, is going to hopefully give players the opportunity to say, okay, I actually can internalize this now, as opposed to there's enough going on between class and the number of mobs and abilities that the only way I could possibly do this is if I also had a cybernetic enhancement telling me on screen, please do this. So
Yeah. Okay, cool. And my last question was just about raid buffs. So raid buffs have had a pretty significant impact on the M plus meta for a while now. And while the M plus meta is kind of something that people often associate just with like that high-end competitive community, it does trickle down a lot into lower keys as well. And the raid buffs specifically in M plus have caused specs with great throughput and utility to struggle to get invited to keys because they don't necessarily bring one of the strong damage ones. And this often disproportionately affects healers and tanks who are then pigeonholed into building raid buffs around the strong DPS, the DPS that are like broken for that specific tier. How does the team feel about raid buffs in Mythic Plus, and also just the balance of raid buffs in general? You know, you have some raid buffs that are damage and some that are DR and some that are utility, but obviously the community values those differently. So I'm curious how you feel about that.
First off, it's awesome that the community has that sort of internal sense of valuation. Like when we provide a slate of content and classes and et cetera, like it's just, in a lot of ways, it's for all of y'all to play with and to sort of determine the best setup. So when I think about this question, it's less, this is strictly problematic. And I think if you were talking to a class designer, you'd probably get a more robust set of answers on the other side of this. As somebody who has built a lot of encounters for players to fight against, I'm more looking at, am I giving you a robust enough set of challenges that everybody at some point gets to feel cool? And then maybe from a data side, am I seeing success rates up until a certain point? Because beyond a certain point, people are sort of stripping all the weight off the car and going as fast as they can recklessly, right? Up to a certain point, are we seeing that every spec can play? And we generally do see that, but as you say, the best players in the world set the tone. That tone absolutely passes down as people try to improve. There's something very noble about that. I don't think it's necessarily something that I have any say in as far as how that's going to change or whatever. I think perhaps right now, just the best way to say is we want to make sure we're providing the tools and the challenge, and hopefully players have a good time sorting out how that fits.
Cool. Thank you.
All right. Well, I think that wraps it up. So Noah, Dylan, thank you for you guys' time.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for talking with us. I appreciate it.
This was lovely. Thank you all.
All right. See you
Cheers,
guys.
y'all.
All right,
Bye.
see you later.